I didn't set it up.
My observations here, it takes time and effort.
I was like,
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to bring the 1,237th regular meeting of the Entomological Society of Washington to order. Mr. Secretary, could you please read the minutes from our last regular meeting?
I can indeed.
Thank you.
In the absence of President Matt Buffington, President-elect Don Weber, and most other society officers of the Entomological Society, Curator Alyssa Seaman called to order the 1236th regular meeting of the Entomological Society of Washington at 7 p.m. on the 6th of April, 2023 in room WG33 in the National Museum of Natural History. The meeting was attended by 11 members, 5 visitors, and 21 virtual visitors, for a total of 37. Recording Secretary Gary Hebel wrote the minutes for the March meeting, and these were approved by the in-person audience. Curator Seaman, with the assistance of Cecilia Escobar, controlled the virtual machinery and introduced the speaker of the evening, Jonah Ulmer, a postdoc working at the National Museum of Natural History with Braconidae under Matt Buffington and David Smith. In the last 50 years, researchers have observed certain glands present in Sauroponid wasps that are important in mating. Although male specimens of Sauroponids have been separable to species determination, the females have consistently been a problem for such separation. Dr. Ulmer has successfully found a way to determine females by dissection of glands on the surface of the abdomen. This process disfigures the specimens, and he has dissected several thousand specimens. Dr. Ulmer then offered results of recent papers by himself and co-authors just published April of 2023. They examined specimens from 44 wasp families in search for glands and relationships among wasp families. The studies have given us new insights, revealing paired interturgid glands in Dipionid wasps, and revealed new avenues for research. The meeting was adjourned at 8:15 p.m.
I have a motion for accepting the minutes as they were read.
But I wasn't sure. I think I heard that Jonah was talking. You and but Mike Gates.
Mike Gates is definitely involved in the postdoctoral mentoring of Dr. Ulmer.
Okay,
If you could please add that.
of course.
Thank you, Dr. Chamorro. Any other additions or corrections to the minutes as read? Have a second to close the minutes.
second.
Thank you very much. And welcome everyone to this meeting. This is the most people we've had in person in quite some time. I'm very happy about that. And I'm really excited to hear Jovana's talk tonight. And just to let you know, we've got a few more postdocs in Hymenoptera still to go to give talks. So this little train is just going to keep on chugging, right? My floor's rocking right now. Okay, so we're going to go through some officer reports now. The first, I would like to ask Dr. Don Weber, President-elect of the Entomological Society of Washington, for his report. Don Weber. Don Weber, are you out there? I can call him. No, I can't. I have no cell phone reception down here. Okay, we'll move on. The treasurer, Dr. Abby Kula, you have a report for us, or are you present in the meeting? As we go down the list. Membership secretary, Elizabeth Young, do you have a report for us? We'll just keep on going down the list. Program chair, Dr. Alan Norbaum, are you there?
Here.
Hey!
Well, we don't have a regular meeting next month. I would just say we'll be looking for speakers for the coming year. Any members are interested in giving a presentation, please let me know.
Cool. Thank you, Alan. Curator.
We continue to move books from point A to point B.
Okay, that's a great update.
Shelter stalled.
Editor, Dr. Mark Metz, are you out there? Oh, Don Weber has just entered the waiting room.
Oh, let's kick him. I let him in.
No report from the editor. Media and communications. Elizabeth. But soon to be webmaster. That's going to be a new officer once we get that on this.
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay. Don Weber, are you there?
I am,
President-elect Don Weber, excellent. Could you give us an update?
yes. I'm happy to report I reached Dave Wagner en route back from California, super bloom country. Apparently not super insect country. The drought has badly affected the insect populations, but presumably focusing on caterpillars. But I'm happy to confirm he will be our banquet speaker on June 15th. And I will send a few more details, but it will be at the Marymount Ballston location in Arlington, which is very conveniently located for metro travelers just west of the Ballston Orange Line stop. And we have a conference room courtesy of Marymount that seats 80. We have an option for an auditorium that seats about twice that much. And we do have to allow the Marymount community to attend the talk. And Matt and I have discussed inviting a larger number of people to attend the talk, which might include master naturalists, master gardeners, various fans of Dave Wagner and his caterpillar biodiversity studies. So that's my good news for tonight. I'm sorry I couldn't make it in person.
Thank you, Don. We really appreciate that. That's great news. And we'll be getting the information out as soon as possible on the event. And it will be potluck, correct?
Yeah. And I'm going to confirm with Dave his exact title. He said 24 hours. So I wanted to do that and a couple other things like whether he'll sign some books or whether he even wants to do that.
Cool. Excellent. Great update. Okay, that's the end of the officer reports. I'd like to open up the floor for the introduction of new members or visitors. We all kind of know each other here. How about online? How about there in television world? TV land. Okay. No virtual hand raising going on?
No hands,
Okay.
but we're happy to have y'all.
Yeah, we're happy to have you all. Okay, is there any unfinished business from the last regular meeting that we should deal with now? How about any new business? Does anyone have any new business to present now?
And I was just going to say about old business, this is tomorrow. I'm dealing with the website, and if you've been having issues signing in or accessing, that'll be resolved for sure tomorrow. We're gonna take the website down for a little bit and add the members that paid before the website went live, and so that should be fixed.
Thank you. One piece of new business, it might be actually unfinished business. We're revising the bylaws. They have not been revised in several years. And we're revising them in such a way that we can make for 501(c) status, which is very important for tax reasons and for donations, et cetera. The bylaws as they are right now are actually with our lawyer, and they are going to actually insert the precise language that they need in order to move those forward. And then it'll be kicked back to us. The executive will review it, make sure it makes any sense. It probably won't, but we'll just move forward anyway. And then open for discussion for the membership. And then we hopefully don't have to do this again for quite some time. But we will have a new position in there. There will be this new business with respect to the nonprofit status and a few other editorial comments that have been brought up and not really dealt with. Okay, we're at the point now with the presentation of notes or exhibits. Has anyone brought anything that they would like to share? Kind of show and tell, entomological show and tell. Moving on. Anyone, how about online? Anyone out there online got something to show us? Having heard nothing, we will now move on to the business at hand. And we've had a tradition, at least since 2007, when I was program chair, when someone knew someone who was giving the talk, they would actually introduce the speaker instead of the program chair. Tonight's no different. Dr. Kula, could you please introduce this evening's speaker?
Happy to do it. Thank you. Oh, thanks. Okay, well, I'm very, very pleased to introduce Dr. Jovana Jasso-Martínez. She is here as a Peterbuck Fellow. I first met Jovana maybe 2 years ago online, collaborating on a project. And it was an excellent collaboration. And the first time I met her in person was she was here for a postdoc. So I guess that's just kind of the world we live in now. So when it's face to face, it's online sometimes. So, Jovana started out in LEPS actually with her master's degree, and then I think somewhat relatively quickly decided that Himes were pretty awesome, and shifted over to Hymenoptera for her PhD. And she did her PhD at the National Autonomous University of Mexico on Braconidae systematics. And she's here working on Braconidae systematics research, phylogenomics research on Braconidae. So with that, I will let Jovana take it from here. And I should read the title of her talk if I could ever find it here. Oh, here it is, yes. Okay, so Jovana's talk tonight is the relevance of natural history collections in the genomics era, the parasitoid wasp of the family Braconidae as an example. So, Jovana, welcome.
I'm super happy to be here. This is my first in-person meeting since a while. So I hope you like it.
Chica.
Yeah. Okay. So many thanks for having me here. I'm super happy. As Bob said, I'm going to talk about the relevance of biological collections, in particular for performing phylogenomic studies. I am going to use as an example my group of study, which is the parasitoid wasps of the family Braconidae. And to do so, I'm going to talk about past research as well as ongoing research that I am doing here in the NMH. So most of them house in museums. Natural history collections are an invaluable record of the diversity and evolution of life. And the material that is deposited in these collections can be considered as a long-term source of data for performing different studies like macroevolutionary or microevolutionary. And also, very important, currently these collections are regarded as a global network research for educators and different students in different areas of knowledge. And currently, something really important is the digitization of this collection, because this helps to maintain this global network. So most of the material that is deposited in collections have available metadata, such as geographical data, and also information of the collection events, such as collector, tier, or in the specific case of parasitic groups, sometimes the information of host records is available. Also, collections are super important repository for fossils, and also for extinct taxa, but also for extinct taxa that are sometimes rare or difficult to collect in the field, because sometimes the biology is unknown, or these are endemic taxa, or because they, for example, in the case of many hymenopterans, they are really old, so it's difficult to do directed field work. Also, this material in collections is a super important source for perform morphological-based studies, such as the description of new taxa. For example, currently there are several examples of species that were discovered in collections and then described. And also more in the mood of this talk, material that is in collections is an important survey for getting tissues to perform DNA-based studies for the DNA extraction and subsequent processing. Next generation techniques are revolutionizing the acquisition of genetic data. Because they allow the production and assembly of millions of short DNA fragments, which is particularly beneficial when working with museum specimens, because many of them are old, are not in the best state of preservation, as is the case of many insect groups, which conducts to have degraded DNA. And also in the specific case of hymenopterans, as I just mentioned, many of them are small, so which conduct to this additional complication of recover only a few quantity of DNA. So all these have opened this museomics field in science, which is the study of genomic data obtained from historical DNA from specimens in museum collections. Museomics-based research is increasing. For example, just last year were published around 30 works using samples that are deposited in collections in different fields for answering questions in population genetics and other different macroevolutionary studies, including systematics. But what kind of genomic information can be obtained from museum specimens? Target enrichment methods such as anchor hybrid enrichment or target of ultra-conserved elements or UCs has demonstrated a higher success rate for the obtention of genomic data when, for example, over enzyme-associated approaches using the grade and low quality samples. Anyways, it's important. The selection of one approach or another depends on the question we want to answer. So it's important to evaluate. But in the specific case of UCE data, we can also, it has been demonstrated that the information obtained from this kind of loci is informative at different levels in the phylogenies. And also an advantage of this is that it's possible to obtain mitochondrial information as a secondary product. For example, allowing to assembly complete or nearly complete mitochondrial genomes. The information of mitochondrial DNA has been widely used for phylogenetic reconstruction, and also the order of the genes in the mitochondrial genome it has been demonstrated that they are also informative for answering different questions. So, considering this, that most of samples we have available to perform studies, we decided to use the UC's the approach to reconstruct the phylogenetic relationships of the family Braconidae. The family Braconidae is a cosmopolitan group for which has been described over 21,000 species, and these wasps are parasitoid of mostly other larval species of other olomentabulous hosts. And they can be endo or ectoparasitoids, which means that the eggs are laid into or on the host, respectively. And also they can be corneal or alveolons, which means that the further development of the host after the eggs were laid. And of course, there are, I don't know, of course, but also there are some few species, some phytophagous species in 3 different subfamilies within Braconidae, which is Braconidae, Braconidae, and Stoinae. And as in many other groups, the classification within Braconidae has been challenging. Among its members, it's possible to find high levels of morphological convergence, and also, which is particularly complicated when performing morphology-based studies. And most studies, like systematic studies, have been focused on group focus, like for example, to family level, and also for those studies that try to reconstruct the phylogenetic relationship of Braconidae as a whole. Most of them were have like taxons, limited taxon sampling, and also morphological molecular information was limited. So it has been, and also, I mean, it's still there is still a need of having additional resources to reconstruct robust phylogenetic hypothesis and propose a more stable classification for the group, because these 2 factors are going to help to try to answer other biological and evolutionary questions. And okay, so using museum samples, many of them were really old, we reconstructed the phylogenetic relationships among the different subfamilies of Braconidae. We sampled most of subfamilies, recognized subfamilies for this group. And we also included, we're using a comprehensive taxon sampling, including taxon that were in a point elevated to family level. And we recover a monophyletic Braconidae with really good support, including this kind of problematic taxa. And also we recover with good support many other relationships, phylogenetic relationships that were proposed in previous studies, based in other sources of molecular data, but also based on morphology. But since we used museum samples, many of them very old, we were interested in evaluate if there was a correlation between the age of the specimens in contrast with the genetic information obtained. So we already found like a correlation between the specimen's age with the number of UC loci recovered. I analyzed separately the two data sets based that were enriched with different versions of the UC's data sets, and in both analyses we recovered similar results. It means that for older specimens we recover significantly less UC loci in comparison with new ones. And we use for the two data sets, the oldest specimens which were 82 and 90 years old respectively, we recovered 130 UC loci and 818 UC loci. And anyways, this information it was enough to include these specimens in our phylogenetic reconstruction, and we recover we recover nodes with strong supports, support even using this data. So as I mentioned before, to try to answer other evolutionary questions, it's very important to have a robust phylogenetic framework. So what is particularly interesting in Braconidae is the story of the evolution of the different parasitoid disease strategies they have. And in general, there is an hypothesis of the evolution of the parasitoid disease strategies in Braconidae, which is the superfamily Braconidae belongs to. And it has been proposed that there has been a transition from idiobionts to ectoparasitoids of concealed hosts to poinobionts endoparasitoids of both exposed and concealed hosts. This based mainly because considering the endoparasitoidism as a protection, as a way to protect the eggs, because they are inside the host and they do not have direct contact with the environment, external environment, and also because when the host is not permanently paralyzed, they can feed on plants, for example. So there is like a more availability of resources, which is beneficial for the parasite. However, this hypothesis was never tested in a phylogenetic framework until recently. These authors reconstructed ancestral states for both the idiobiont and poinobiont strategies, as well as for ecto and parasitoidism. And they recover as the ancestral state for Entomological strategy idiobiont ectoparasitoid. However, for Braconidae, they recover different results depending on the sampling they use for different analysis. And also the taxon sampling for this work was removed. So making use of this phylogeny we recover using UC site, we reconstructed ancestral states for both idio and poinobiosis, as well as for ecto and endoparasitoidism. And we recover as an ancestral state the strategy poinobiont endoparasitoid with multiple subsequent transitions in different plates of Braconidae, transitions from ectoparasitoidism and vice versa, as well as poino and idobiosis and vice versa. So we recover a strong correlation between poino and endoparasitoidism, poinobiosis and endoparasitoidism. And on the other hand, we recover also a strong correlation between idobiosis and ectoparasitoidism. And we recover, there is a subfamily, there is Polani. This is a group in where these traits seems to be kind of broken, because this group is composed by species poinobionts and ectoparasitoids. And also we explore the possibility of recover mitochondrial information as a secondary product of UC's libraries. And we were able to assemble 132 complete and partial mitochondrial genomes. And for all these mitochondrial genomes, regarding the protein coding genes, we recovered for most of them, I think for all of them, the CO1 protein coding gene, and for for 85 out of 132, we recover this gene, ND2. And about the transference RNAs, we recover for most samples this cluster composed for these different transverse RNAs. And for a few samples, about 60, we recover this other cluster. And also, again, considering that we used old museum samples, we wanted to evaluate if, again, there was a correlation between the size of the assembly of mitochondrial genomes with the age of the specimens. And we again found this correlation in which old samples recover, for older samples we recover shorter assemblies, in contrast with more recent samples for which we recover for most of them complete mitochondrial genomes. But anyways, even when we found this correlation, this information was phylogenetically informative. So we recover good supported phylogeny of Braconidae using this mitochondrial information. And this mitochondrial phylogeny was highly congruent with the UC's phylogeny. And we again recover a monophyletic Braconidae, including these problematic taxa as Braconidae and Wasps, which were elevated to family level in previous studies. We also recover the cyclostome and the non-cyclostome plates as monophyletic with good support. And also the 4 non-cyclostome complexes were recovered with good support. And what is particularly interesting when working with mitochondrial DNA is with mitochondrial genomes is if the order of mitochondrial genes is somehow informative. And in fact, this information, the order of the genes in the mitochondrial genome is informative, has been used for Braconidae, in fact. So in other previous studies for the cyclostome and the non-cyclostomes, it has been recovered a differential gene pattern in 2 clusters of transference RNAs. And in here, for example, it's pretty clear that for the non-cyclostomes, we have there is this pattern of this cluster of transference RNAs. And for the cyclostomes, there is like a translocation of one transference RNA. So anyways, these works are a good precedent about the genes, the order of the genes is informative at different levels in Braconidae. However, again, these works were used at a limited taxon sampling. Most of the subfamilies were represented only by 1 species. So other questions remains, for example, if these gene orders were informative somehow at different other levels, for example, at the interior of some subfamilies. So we record this order in the transference RNAs, and we found for the first time that these orders are informative within some subfamilies, at least for the ones we had like better taxon representation at Braconidae and Braconidae. We recovered a differential order in these clusters that was informative at tribe level, which is like really cool. And anyways, we have now like a better general understanding, better knowledge about the phylogeny of Braconidae, as well as the different transitions of the parasitoid strategies that these species have. But anyways, there are other questions that still remains as always, and something striking among the members of Braconidae is that there is a very pronounced difference in known species richness among different lineages. For example, at subfamily level, Braconidae has subfamilies with less than 50 species, like Jasso-Martínez and Braconidae. Also, there are some subfamilies that have like a few hundred species, like Braconidae or Braconidae. But also, Braconidae has subfamilies with over 2,000 or 3,000 species, like Braconidae and Braconidae. So this difference could be correlated with the age of the specimen of the different lineages, but also it could be this difference in species richness among the different lineages of Braconidae could be a product of shifts in diversification rates. And if so, are these shifts linked to their different life history strategies? So these are 2 questions I am looking for answer as part of my postdoctoral here in the NMH. And to do so, I'm using the Smithsonian Braconidae collection, which is the largest Braconidae collection in the world, with 250,000 in specimens in 600 drawers, and also a lot of primary types in hundreds of thousands of specimens in the ethanol collection. And also in this Hymenoptera group, there are different experts in different groups of Hymenoptera, including Braconidae. So as preliminary results of my project here in the NMNH, I could recover a more comprehensive phylogeny of Braconidae with over 600 Braconidae tacta. And also we were able to recover information of 2 missing subfamilies that were missing in this published Braconidae phylogeny. So we now have sampled 40 out of 41 recognized subfamilies of this of Braconidae. And most of the nodes obtained in this phylogeny have high support. And also is really good that using a really old sample, which was over 100 years old, we recovered 271 informative using the and we were able to include this sample in this phylogeny. And we recovered a monophyletic Braconidae with 2 monophyletic cyclostome and non-cyclostome plates, and we increased the outgroup for this phylogeny. So this is the next step for this project is to date this phylogeny and to try to assess to calculate the different diversification rates, and then try to answer these questions regarding the different shifts in diversification. So finally, I would like to highlight that in this history collection, we have million specimens with potential to be used in different evolutionary studies. And regardless that the specimen age is correlated with the amount of genetic information obtained, in our specific case, the number of loci we cover, this information is still very informative, at least phylogenetically speaking. And also in our particular case, when working with all the museum samples, target enrichment methods are suitable to perform museum-based research over other methods and similar. So thank you to my collaborators and for the colleagues, and thank you everyone for being here.
Plenty of time for questions here and also online.
Yeah, I had a question I can start off with, and I can also switch you off the screen share. Do you have to completely destroy the specimen, or are you able to take apart like a leg or something?
Sometimes for big specimens like 1 centimeter or something, it's possible to take a leg, and yeah, it can add destructive DNA extraction technique. But most groups in Braconidae are very small.
Very little, yeah.
So we use the whole specimen, so you can make like a little hole in the metasoma or the mesosoma, and then use the whole specimen for DNA extraction. And this is good because you can still keep the specimen like complete. Yeah. I mean, there is like a change a little bit of fold or something, but the specimen is there.
Well, our last speaker was dealing with, he completely destroyed every specimen. So.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like there was no way to get, I wasn't bad mouthing our last speaker. But
yeah, I mean, I destroyed quite a few.
But I can get a section.
Yeah, to get, in the name of science.
It has not been needed.
I have a quick question, Jian Duan from USDARS. Nice talk. I have a question about the preservation of DNA in terms of a pin specimen versus alcohol preserved. So what do you see? What is your recommendation in terms of for the future DNA extraction?
In fact, for other study I didn't mention it here, I also evaluated if there was a correlation between the number of UC loci recovered from clean specimens versus the ones in alcohol, in ethanol. And of course, yeah, also, I didn't found like a statistic difference between this, But of course, it's always better to work with specimens that are in ethanol, because you can see even when you quantify the DNA, you have like a super different amount in comparison with specimens that are in it. So yeah, if you have specimens in alcohol, I would prefer to use them, but sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's like the gold specimen that is clean. So
do you think that the concentration for alcohol make a difference? Like you can put in molecular grade, or 95% or 70%?
the what?
The concentration of the alcohol, like either can use molecular grade alcohol or versus 95% or 70%.
You can, if you can preserve your specimen like in, how do you say this in English? 100% ethanol. It's thing because is there is like less chance to evaporation.
Yeah, contaminate. Okay.
I would recommend that.
Okay. Thank you.
It's awesome talk, awesome research, really impressed with it. So I'm always amazed, right? I'm really amazed at how the UC approach has unlocked the value of collections. I mean, they're already valuable for other reasons, but really for molecular research. Can you talk a little bit about how the UC approach differs from other approaches, current and previous, in sort of unlocking the value of natural history specimens and natural history collection for molecular research? That's it.
So is this a question? Because
It's a question, yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how the UC approach has sort of unlocked or opened up the value of specimens and natural history collections differently than maybe previous molecular techniques or even current molecular techniques?
Yeah, I mean, the museum-based research is like not that new. But yeah, I mean, I like use this kind of target enrichment method, like UCs, because it allows to use this material that is already available for us. Because sometimes you need, I mean, this allows to increment taxon sampling, including this kind of data that are usually sometimes impossible to get in the field. So yeah.
How would it compare to, say, like when people would previously try to use museum specimens derived in insect specimens from using a Sanger sequencing approach?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, for when you are trying to sequencing using Sanger approaches, sometimes you need like, I mean, the DNA is degraded in like in short fragments. So sometimes when you are trying to do Sanger approach, it's not possible to amplify this some like target loci or like CO1 or something, because you need like longer fragments. And with this kind of approaches, you can to avoid like this complication, because you can work with the great DNA, like shorter fragments, and then assembly them.
And how about like other genomics techniques like anchored enrichment? How?
Like for example, enzyme associated. Okay. This is different because for example, when you are trying to, I don't know, like amplify UCs, you can test like in a gel if your DNA is already degraded. So you can take in that very moment the decision of sharing or not your samples. But when you are trying to put with enzymes, you cannot. I mean, even if you have like degrade DNA, you have to put more. So sometimes it's not possible. Like you have degrade DNA that is already in small fragments, and then you need to put again. Is not reliable. So it's because of that target enrichment methods have this advantage.
Do you have any hypotheses about whether the endoparasites or the ectoparasites would be associated with more diversification?
for diversification, like the link traits.
Yeah.
With this, it has been thought in general that endoparasitidism is like a more complex strategy because you need to avoid the immune system of the host because the eggs are right beside the host.
Right.
And in general, it has been thought, but also for ectoparasitidism, you need like a strong cuticle in the head of the larva. So both strategies have like really complex traits to develop. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of try to explore, try to measure net diversification rates, and over that hypothesis, try to see if there is like a pattern. Because yeah, probably a year ago, I would say like, yeah, probably the transition is from idio to ectoparasitidism because it's more complex, but ectoparasitidism is also complex. So yeah.
Bit of a follow-up on that one. To map these characters and to optimize their evolutionary rates, for instance, so to test whether or not endos or ectos are more successful, you need to have enough of your in-group that you're analyzing with actual biological data.
Yeah.
And I know enough about Braconidae to know we don't know much about Braconidae, like at the terminal level. You can estimate, you can guess all microgastrines do a certain thing or whatever, but how do you address that? That's a tough one for me.
Yeah, in fact, it's difficult because what we have done is like an extrapolation.
Okay.
For example, at gender level. So for some species, we have already biological information. So we were trying to find if some closely related species in the same genus have like available information. So what we did was extrapolate. So in these cases, I mean, you can fix this problem, but for example, there are other lineages, for example, like Jasso-Martínez, which is the sister group of all the older Braconidae. So there is not information about this group. So you can just code like as you know. So we already tested in our published work if there was like a strong effect if we extrapolated versus code as unknown. And in fact, there was not like such impact. So, but yeah, you have to deal with this because for most Braconidae, there is no biological information to try to fix this and extrapolation, like for closely related species, closely related genus, it can be done.
Cool. Brendan first and then Jonah.
Yeah, so you answered a couple of my questions with some of the prior questions, and I have a lot more questions, but I'll stick to one, which is that I was not expecting there to be transition from one parasitoid state to another with a strong signal for reversal. So, me not, being ignorant of Braconids, unlike Matt and Bob and you and a lot of other people, it's hard for me to, do you have a sense of if there's a signature that's left from going from one state to the other? Is there something that you can look at and say, oh, this would clue me into this clade reversing to endoparasitoid, or, yeah.
That's a pretty good question because I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Look at different larval stages or the underlying of these stages, but right now I cannot think of something that can inform me a little bit about this transition, like this direction.
Yeah.
I guess to jump off of Matt and Brendan's questions, So with the endoparasitoids, they have to do with the immune system versus ectoparasitoids. Would there be variation in the polydnavirus that they're using that you could use as some sort of detection of a given lineage, even if you don't have biological information to go, oh, this is an endoparasitoid? I feel like it's more of a virology question, but
So you are asking,
is there differences in the polydnavirus between ecto and endoparasitoids of Braconidae?
polydnaviruses have only been found in endoparasitoids.
Okay,
The microgastrine complex, that's a complex, and in the Ophidiinae species of Ophidiinae.
okay,
And also in entomological, we also have
Yeah.
these viral elements. Yeah, they are endoparasitoids. So yeah, that's the thing
But
that
not all-
polydnaviruses have been only confirmed to be present with endoparasitoids.
but not all endoparasitoids. Or
No,
all,
not in all.
okay.
No, only in
That's also
three
interesting
different
in its own
lineages.
right.
I mean, in Braconidae, only in two lineages.
Mhm.
The microgastrine, the microgastrine complex, and in Ophidiinae.
Two species.
Yeah.
Ben, shot that.
Yeah, so I don't know much about anything about these groups, but I'm curious about in different Braconidae lineages, if they're endoparasitoids basically, and then they evolved to be ectoparasitoids, and then back to endo, and then back to ecto. Do you see lineages where the taxon will like evolve from endo to ecto and back again?
Could you please repeat it? Sorry.
Well, do you find lineages evolving to be endoparasitoids and then later on, further up the tree, becoming ectoparasitoids and then back to endo? Do you find these reversals happening in different lineages of Braconidae?
In what plates the reversal occur?
Yeah, do you find the reversals happening often?
Yeah.
In many plates?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we estimated like the ancestral strategy and endoparasitism was conviosis, but in three different plates, we found like this reversal back. So yeah, for coinobiosis, for endoparasitism we recover three reversal backs, but for coinobiosis we recover 4 reversals back. The ectoparasitism reversals back because these Ricipoline subfamily have like this big correlation between these two traits.
Do you have any theories as to what would trigger a reversal back to a different state of parasitism?
Probably like the host available. Like I think this is more like antinomics or more ecological. Probably this has to be with the host ranges because host ranges can be regarded as like phylogenetically closer or not, or also because the mutual occupancy. So probably this would correlate with that. Yeah, I think that would be.
So you think like maybe some Braconidae, if they start to colonize a different host, they might develop a different strategy.
Yeah, exactly. Like the host range, how specific is this strategy? Because there are hosts that are like the parasitoid actually attack, but for example, if that host is not more available, because you can also separate these hosts between the ones that are already attacked and the ones that are available to attack.
It's very interesting.
I was just curious if what kind of traits are you including in this analysis? Like is only the parasitism type, or are there other things that are you thinking? Like I was thinking of body size being maybe one thing, or I don't know, the host range or something.
Yeah, right now, like the original idea of the project is evaluated these the main strategies because it's like really clear that there are some places that are ecto or endo or whatever. But also these strategies have traits like virus endogenization in some plates, like the specificity of the host, like host ranges, regard them like phylogenetically closely related or environmental closely related, and also carapacitation. Some groups of within Braconidae have like really strong metasoma, like carapace-like, whereas are others that have like really soft metasoma. So yeah, it's something that you really need to sit and think what traits will be important to evaluate it, because probably they are promoting differential diversification rates.
So I guess kind of related, like, is the body size, like, does it vary a lot within the same lineage, or are they all like the small ones with the very small ones with
No,
the larger?
It varies a lot. For example, the biggest braconids are in the Macrocentrine, in the very tiny Braconidae, but also, for example, Braconidae and very tiny, they also have like really tiny species. So yeah, there is not like that spotting.
What about generalists versus specialists? How do they map? Are there more endo versus ectoparasitoids? Are there more diverse lineages? Generalists or specialists?
The endoparasitoids tend to be more specialists, and the ectoparasitoids tend to be more generalist. But also there is still like a discussion what a generalist is, at what level, the same species, the same genus. So, but in general, this is the pattern. Endos are more specialized, and ectos are more generalized.
Going back to methods, lab methods. So it's amazing, 138-year-old specimen that you had that success. Do you treat really old specimens any differently when you're doing lab with them versus something more recent? Like, what are your methods there?
Yeah, for DNA extraction is the same because we are using a kit for everything. But what I do differently is the number of cycles of PCR in the library prep. So for those like very old samples, I use like even 20 PCR cycles in the library prep. But for those that are like, I don't know, like 50 years, that for me, it's not bad. I use like 40 cycles. So yeah, I think in my experience, the number of cycles help a lot to get more genomic data. Yeah, it's what I do different.
Do you think you see more success with older dried pin specimens versus older specimens in ethanol? Right? Would you have more success with the older dried ones than the ethanol ones?
In fact, I don't have like I think I don't have all the specimens that are in ethanol. Most of them are. So I don't have like enough data to.
So they have a ton of old specimens in ethanol here at the museum. And
yeah.
I don't think that we really utilize those very much, but I would expect you not to be. I would expect not as effective. But.
Yeah, you're right. We haven't used these old specimens that are already in ethanol, but I could say that it's. I mean, if 14 specimens I have to cope with this amount of information, I would say that for the ones, even if they are old but they are in ethanol, I think it's going to be kind of easier to get this data.
With the ethanol.
Yeah, I would say that.
Sorry, I wonder though, because if the content of ethanol is like 70% and it evaporates, then this specimen is in other water. Oh, sorry. Doesn't it like kind of degrade? Like I worry about that a lot.
Yeah, I mean it's degrade, but also private specimens have like really degrade DNA. I mean,
I guess yeah.
Yeah. The thing is try to get this information. I think it's worth it always try.
What about getting DNA out of like a caterpillar? that was parasitized. Oh my God.
Whoa.
Let's talk about that.
Communicate on Zoom.
So I'm kind of having fun thinking about degradation of DNA in ethanol versus in air. If you were to speculate about what it is that is breaking the DNA so finely when it's dry, I'd love to hear your speculations.
So we say it again.
Yeah, so what do you think is exactly making DNA fragment so much over time when the specimen is simply dry? Do you think that might be changing humidity over the
Yeah,
years? Or
totally.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, if you have dry and small specimens, they lose humidity super fast. So this, of course, I think is a factor that breaks DNA. Totally.
I think cuticle thickness also might have something to do with it. Because the thinner things, they dry out faster.
It also depends how they were killed.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a big factor as well.
I don't do a lot of sequencing work, so this might be a silly question, but for the really little guys, the microhymes, do you lose quality of data even if there's like too much glue on the specimen or dusty or something like that because it's old and it's collected?
I first thought that yes, but not.
No.
Because for some specimens that are really small, as I mentioned, you need to use the whole specimen and to put it in the like these two enzymes that break the cells. But sometimes the specimen has that amount of glue that it's not possible to retire like this.
Do you accidentally sequence the glue?
So, but I mean, sometimes the glue is there, and anyways, you can still get information.
That's great. Yeah.
Because at the beginning, I was kind of, okay, the glue is there.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get this information, but I tried and I got it. So yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's kind of like.
No questions in the chat, but I had one quick.
Scroll down.
Show us, I'll believe you.
Oh, well, I can go over this screen for that.
I did have a question. Ms. Don, there was a whole bunch of laughter when you talked about detecting it within the caterpillars. What did that mean? Because it's entirely possible. In fact, there's a recent record I was just looking at of Centistes, which is a braconid, being detected within spotted cucumber beetle, Chrysomelid, that were intercepted from Mexico. And that's the only record for that species being parasitized by the Centistes. So it's a very valuable technique, really, for the endoparasitoids, I think, potentially, you know, especially ones in a larval stage or early stage when you might not even be able to detect it except by dissecting a large number of specimens. But it's interesting that this is the whole question of degradation of DNA. You know what the worst environment is a predator eats something and it's being digested, and it's digested very quickly, typically, especially with chewing mouth parts such as beetles eating whatever they're eating. Whereas the alcohol is the other end, very, very slow, right? The best thing for our preservation.
Yeah, totally.
I have one quick show and tell from John as well. You want to just share?
Oh, well, that's my, you all can see my picture. It's not my picture, but it's a stink bug known as the minstrel bug, Graphosoma italicum from Europe. And oh, well, it's just one of those nice aposematic stink bugs. One interesting thing is the nymphs are not colorful at all. And it probably reflects that they haven't yet sequestered enough of the nasty chemicals from the umbelliferæ, now known as Apiaceae, the carrot family, that these adults have. So just kind of an interesting, I don't know, to me, it's a really pretty bug.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like a round of applause for Jovana. Of course, this is our last meeting of the society for the summer recess, which is kicked off by the annual banquet, which will be in June, as President-elect Don Weber has announced. So we can all look forward to that. Then we get a couple months of intense field work, and then we can meet back here in September. This room, this time, this president, and hopefully some bylaws as well. So with that, I'd like to ask someone to make a motion to close the 1,237th regular meeting of the Entomological Washington. Is there a second? Thank you. And good night. But you know what? Further discussion on the Heim form is necessary. Probably inevitable. Sorry about that. Yeah.